We're here today to talk to you about something which sounds like it's out of a spy movie, actually. It could either be a really, really good spy movie or it could be a very, very bad and trashy one. What would happen if a nuclear power plant were hacked? So, Shovan, what can you take our viewers through sort of what's the basic facts here? What are we looking at here?
Right. So when this news first came out through tweets by cybersecurity expert Pukrat Singh, he brought up this extremely serious issue. But throughout the day, as it has developed, and we've got official denial from the Kudankulam nuclear power plant, what the basic issue here is that Pukrat Singh had raised an alarm saying that there's enough evidence to suggest that there is a malware in the IT system of the power project, which can compromise day-to-day key information about the power plant and its employees, etc. So it was at the IT system level. But the denial that then the official statement that then came from the power plant, the power project, said that the control systems are unaffected. Nobody can compromise the control systems, which is addressing an entirely different aspect of the whole project. So while they were sort of trying to bring up the issue of IT system being compromised, the denial came about the operational technology, which are two separate things here, which needs to be clarified.
So to explain to the viewers, so what is essentially, to sort of recap of this, and obviously there'll be some of you who'll be joining in as we're speaking, what we're here to talk to you today about is a potential cyber attack on the Kudankulam nuclear power plant. This is one of India's very, very important power plants based in Tamil Nadu. There had been a lot of controversy even when it was actually started, but essentially the main point here is the Kudankulam power plant, there is credible inputs that it may have actually been the victim of a malware attack. Now, as my colleague Sushovan here, who is our tech and policy expert, he was sort of taking you through the fact that, look, we've got all these inputs about there being a cyber attack, but the nuclear power plant itself has come out and said, look, there's no possibility of a cyber attack, in fact, on it. Now, as Shovan sort of explained, the issue here is that you've got a bunch of different systems which work in a power plant like this. You've got the administrative IT systems, and you've got the stuff which actually controls the reactors. So what was talked about was not that someone had taken control of the reactor and was going to blow it up and cause a nuclear winter in Tamil Nadu. But what they did point out was that someone has gained access to the administrative side of the IT systems at the power plant. Now, so let's kind of examine what does this mean, right? So this all started with a tweet by a cybersecurity account on Twitter talking about the fact that there was a detection on what's called virus total of a malware attack using something called Dtrack. Now, Dtrack was something which Kaspersky, as some of you may be using in your computers, must have seen it as an antivirus and an internet security system. So Kaspersky does a lot of this research into all of this. So Kaspersky had found this thing called Dtrack, which is a kind of malware. So Shovan, you had come across this there was something about this being used for hacking bank accounts as well a while ago.
Yes, so as Kaspersky has revealed that in September they detected this what they have called a banking malware, a malware called ATM Dtrack, which was designed to sort of penetrate and infiltrate ATM machines across banking networks to steal important, very highly sensitive information such as credit card information or financial information about its users. Which has been around since 2018 at least, from what we know from Kaspersky. So, and I also had a word with the former National Cybersecurity Coordinator Gulshan Rai, who was in office till March this year, who also said that during his tenure he had come across, he knew of Dtrack as a malware which affects banking networks and ATMs. So this is a very sophisticated network whose sort of primary motive is data theft. And that is a very important point to remember, is that this Dtrack malware, there are two things to remember primarily about this malware, which is at the center of this controversy today. One, that it is designed for data theft, for spying on information, for sort of sucking out information. And the second thing is that it appears to be still very much active, a point that has not been acknowledged at all in the official denial that has come from the power plant. And the other thing is that so far the only reaction we've got is from the Kudankulam power project. There has been no official reaction from the National Cybersecurity Coordinator.
So basically, malware, as you might be aware, it's the kind of thing which can creep onto your computer and can allow people to get access to your bank accounts, your passwords, could even allow someone to sort of take some sort of backdoor access to certain functions on your computer. Now, if you go to the article on the Quint's website, it's the #1 article right now. When you go there, the moment you hit the homepage, it's there. On that, we've actually got links to articles by Kaspersky on what exactly Dtrack can do. So if you look at that, it's given a list of these sort of exe files and processes which you can execute on your computer. So if it gets into your computer, it can be used for a lot of pretty nasty things. Now, what the allegation was essentially that this malware had been detected on a bunch of in a number of places, and then one of the detections took place in what seemed to be the Kudankulam nuclear power plant. Now, this is what was what we all became aware of sort of last night, as this came out on the security researchers' tweets. Now, after this, what was interesting was this could have just ended at that point, a bunch of people getting into conspiracy theory over it. But then Pukhraj Singh, who is one of the men who helped set up the National Technical Research Organization, is one of the people responsible. He's a former officer there. And the NTRO is the premier agency behind India's cyber defense, and he was one of the men key to actually setting all of this up. He was the one. It was his tweet which really set the ball in motion, because he, someone who is pretty much an expert on this matter, said that, actually he endorsed that tweet and said, I had actually found this earlier and I'd even notified the government about it. So that's where it all comes to. Again, to sort of take you back, for those who are joining us a bit more recently, we're talking about a potential security breach at the Kudankulam nuclear power plant. It arose after reports emerged on social media that the Dtrack malware had been detected at the Kudankulam nuclear power plant. Now, what does this mean for us at this point? So Sushovan, we're going to sort of try and sort of break this down, because initially it was just, there's this malware is there. Wasn't sure what it meant. There's a lot of very technical stuff. If you check our article again, we've got the original tweet which talks about this, and it should be in fact playing for you right now while we're talking. Now, what this was then clarified by people like Pukhraj Singh was that this actually led to what was called a domain controller level access at the nuclear power plant. Now, Sushovan, can you help us with this jargon? Because I stopped really getting into computers a while ago, and I'm pretty bad at technology at this point. So Shovan, you are a bit better. What is domain controller level access?
So at the cost of earning the wrath of actual cybersecurity experts, I'll try to sort of explain it in simple terms. So essentially, what these cybersecurity experts have sort of raised concern about regarding the malware is that it has domain controller access, which is again different from the controller system access, which has been mentioned in the official denial, saying that the control systems have not been affected.
So just to clarify, what this is, what Sushovan is trying to tell you is that there's a number of things which a computer system at a power plant will involve. One is obviously the big stuff with the nuclear rods and the potential killing everyone Chernobyl disaster thing, and the other is just sort of the day-to-day administration, the IT system, like what you would have at your office or what you'd be setting up if you were trying to set up a set of servers. Right. So that's what this is about.
So it's essentially what the malware appears to have, the level at which the malware appears to have affected is through the domain controller access, by which it has potentially gained access to a central database which has information about organizational activities on a day-to-day level. For example, an office would have username and passwords of all the employees who log into the offices or the company's IT system. So that is the level at which this malware appears to have potentially affected. And even though it is not gaining very sort of sophisticated information, it is nonetheless very important to remember that this information is very important and very crucial for anybody who might be trying to get it, because it is information about the day-to-day activities, the employees, and once inside the system, you have access to the usernames and passwords. You can mimic or pretend to be somebody within the organization and have access to their organizational database, which is not to say that that it has affected the power plant in a way which can cause a disruption in its functioning, which is important to remember.
So that's, I think, important, because we're getting some comments where I think so Srivatsa is a bit concerned that we might be potentially allowing the spread of phobia or fear at this point about this, and that's something which we're trying to, the idea behind this is we're hoping to kind of make that very clear that that's not, this is, you don't need to worry about some controlled nuclear reaction taking place because some hacker, say, sitting in North Korea is going to get involved. That's absolutely not something which we need to be worried about, and that's actually exactly why we're doing this live. We're trying to help you understand what's going on. Now, so what we've tried to therefore explain to you here is that what was potentially accessed in this data breach, sorry, not data breach actually, but in this malware breach by this potential cyber attack is not the ability to wreak nuclear havoc on the citizens of the area in Tamil Nadu where this reactor is. This is about the fact that just the basic IT system of the plant, like the administrative access, has been potentially compromised. Now, we actually spoke to Dr. Ramdas, the training superintendent and information officer at the Kudankulam nuclear power project, and he is the one who issued the government's official, so the power plant's official denial of any potential attack and any risk of attack. And in his so we can actually read out, so we can read out to you the exact wording which was used in the statement. It said that, look, there is no possibility of a cyber attack on the Kudankulam nuclear power plant's control system or the control system of any Indian nuclear power plant, because these are standalone systems, and that's the important thing to understand here. So we're not talking about the controls of the reactor itself, but that's actually sort of the big question which we're going to be coming to in a bit, as to does that still mean that there's no risk here? As Sushovan's explained, even getting something like IT access can be quite problematic, because the domain controller level access is what decides who gets to access all your network and all the information on it. So while off the top of your head, and Dr. Ramdas told us that as such from the administrative side, it's only things like the employees' pay records or their employment history, details of their personal lives. That's pretty much all the sensitive data which is there on that administrative side. The danger is that what if once you've got control of this, you can start giving other people access, or you could potentially compromise the ability of the people who need to access those things to do it. So say there's an emergency, you're trying to send out just something as simple as sending out the right protocols to say that, look, there's been an accident at the plant, or there's been a supply shortage or something of that sort. If you can compromise the IT system, you could cause a lot of trouble by just disrupting all of that, and that's something which could have happened here. So big picture, please do not worry about a nuclear accident. There have also been some reports have been shared on social media about the fact that one of the reactors was recently shut down and in fact is currently operating at lower capacity. Dr. Ramdas insists that has assured us that that is not a result of any potential cyber attack, and that's not necessarily the case here. But that's something which we will return to look at in terms of what happened. Because now, so what we had was Pukhraj Singh, this expert who became aware of this malware breach. He reached out, he followed protocol. He didn't decide to just go and tell everyone on Twitter about it. So he actually discovered this back in early September. On 3rd September, he became aware of this. He then reached out to the National Cyber Security Coordinator, which is currently Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant. Now, the Quint has reached out to General Pant, but he has not yet responded to us. We will obviously update you the moment we hear anything from him. But we were able to speak to Pant's predecessor as the National Cybersecurity Advisor. So Shovan, can you take us through what he told us? Because he told us when such an event comes up, when something like this happens, what do they do? Again, quick recap for those who are joining us right now. We're talking about whether or not there is a risk that the Kudankulam nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu has been compromised by a malware attack, what the potential risks are, is there, and trying to of course also settle some nerves that there's no risk of any nuclear accident as a result of this, and also sort of tell you what are the potential risks which could happen here, which is basically access to the administrative IT systems. So we are basically going to talk about what Gulshan Rai told us. So he took us through the whole process of what happens. So can you tell us what he told us?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to speak with Gulshan Rai, who was the former National Cybersecurity Coordinator. And what he essentially told us is what happens in a scenario like this when a malware incident of this magnitude is reported to the National Cybersecurity Coordination Center. So what he essentially said was that if a malware attack was reported on September 3rd by Pukrat Singh to the National Cybersecurity Coordinator, he would have most certainly taken it up with the Atomic Energy Department, which is under the Prime Minister's office, and also would have taken it up with the the Nuclear Power Corporation, which essentially runs these power projects. So these agencies would have immediately have been notified, as would have the Ministry of Home Affairs. Because why? Because this involves critical infrastructure. Now, the fact that it is a power plant and not say somebody's house or a movie theater. So critical infrastructure is accorded the highest level of security, and any breach on any critical infrastructure, be it say an airport, be it a hospital, be it a government office, or be it in this case, requires the highest level of coordination. And he said that they would have immediately coordinated and would have definitely taken action and not ignored it. This is what Dr. Gulshan Rai said. And in terms of why there has not been any sort of feedback on what is happening, what he had to say was that, given the extremely sensitive nature of this case, given the very important sort of implications of what this can do, he said that ideally the NTRO or the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center would not reach out to anybody, including those who report such incidents, and tell them what is happening, just to protect the secrecy of critical infrastructure projects like this.
So I think the key thing to realize here is that we are probably not going to see the government come out and say that yes, XYZ has happened or Y is it. That doesn't mean things aren't actually being done. The government is actually looking into this. There is a whole protocol which is in place. So that is the good news, is that is what is probably happening. Now, as I said, we also spoke to Dr. Ramdas. He multiple times asserted that, look, there is a clear difference between the administrative systems and the controller system of the nuclear power plant, so there's no real reason to be concerned about that. The only slightly concerning thing, of course, I think, is that the NCSC, he confirmed that the NCSC has not contacted him. So even though Pukrat Singh has been able to confirm that, look, he did approach the National Cybersecurity Coordinator and inform them of the breach, no such information seems to have been passed on to the nuclear power plant itself. Again, that's not necessarily something which had to be done. But it is something which obviously, hopefully now the information is out there and there will be a proactive way to look at it. One interesting question we're getting from Raghvendra Pal Singh, who has asked, which are the other areas affected by Dtrack recently and how can it be prevented? So Shovan, so Dtrack started as something related to ATMs. It was called ATM Dtrack. Which was a sort of malware which was being used to sort of siphon off information from people's cards at ATMs, and which could then be used in the banking system. And it's expanded to more than that. There were reports earlier this year that it might have actually been used to attack a number of financial institutions, a number of big companies. So there's, I think, a report, if you want to check, there's one on Live Mint about that. By what I was going to just try and point out is, you also asked, so what can we do to deal with Dtrack? My suggestion is the best thing to do would be to look at the Kaspersky links which we've included in our article. So there's one on what they call Kaspersky Secure List. So they have, for instance, suggested that they've advised companies to tighten their network and password policies, use traffic monitoring software such as Kaspersky's, obviously they plug that, and use certain antivirus solutions. It seems pretty basic, but there's a few more details in another of their, so we're just sort of opening up these details for you so that you can sort of take a look. There's a press release again where they've given some basic instructions of what you can do to kind of protect yourself from this, because this is one of the new things which has come out, and it's by what's called the Lazarus Group. So Shovan, what can you tell our viewers about the Lazarus Group?
So the Lazarus Group appears to be the largest hacker group operating out of North Korea currently, and so the Lazarus Group was has been attributed as being behind the sophisticated Dtrack malware, which affects ATMs and sort of steals credit card information and other financial information from users who use those ATMs. Now North Korea has had a long history with cyber attacks, and one shouldn't form an opinion about North Korea given the kind of reports we hear about them. North Korea actually has a very sophisticated and very active cyber state-sponsored or state-backed and non-state-backed cyber militia, which incidentally, if you would remember, was also behind the attack on Sony Pictures, which was going to release a film called The Dictator, which sort of lampooned or mocked the North Korean head of state, Kim Jong-un, and showed him sort of being killed. So before that movie was released, they attacked Sony Pictures' computers, shutting them down as an act of warning. So North Korea has had a history in this case, and they are the ones who are behind sort of this malware.
So, as we said, there's, I think the best solution to maybe figure out what to do about Dtrack and to make yourself less vulnerable is to look up what the Kaspersky guys are saying. Essentially, it's about that there's supposedly, if you get a good anti-traffic monitoring system, that should help you, and that's sort of the main big thing which you can look to try and do. So, do make sure you keep yourself safe and look for more details on that. We will try and keep you updated. One other thing, the Quint has also recently reported something which may have come out of actually the ATM Dtrack hacks earlier, is that a number of around 1.3 million Indian bank cards have been compromised, and their details are available on the darknet for sale. So some quick tips it seems from there, which we would say is, try and disable international transactions on your cards, and maybe try to be careful about ATM withdrawals for a while. But essentially, so that's some of the consequences which Dtrack can have, and it's really sort of going about trying to affect the financial system. We got another question from Dhruv Raj Singh Rawat, who says, what if a nuclear maintenance team or a member goes rogue? How to counter the security crisis? Well, I mean, we'd all love to, I think, try and be experts on this. I think, to be fair, we've got pretty robust security measures in place to deal with that sort of thing. There's good monitoring by the NSA, by the NCI IPC. So I think we're in good hands in that regard. So I think that's something which is obviously lies more with them. There's another question from Srivatsa, who says, coming back to, I think Srivatsa is not too happy with the fact that we're talking about this. He says, what lies at the end of this tunnel is a new campaign to show our security forces inadequate. Well, no, actually, as we pointed out, I think quite clearly here, there is a robust protocol in place to deal with this, and it is dealing with this, as a former National Cyber Security Coordinator was quite confident about. And we think, therefore, that our viewers should be very safe, secure in the idea that, the plant, the control system of the plant may not have been compromised, and that there are robust procedures in place.
And the fact that it's air-gapped.
And yeah, because now, but that's, of course, so that comes to our next question, right? So now what we're being told today is that the administrative system, which is potentially vulnerable because it is, there is an access to malware and across the internet, versus the control system, which is about the actual nuclear reactor itself. There's an air gap, as it's called. The control system, there is no access to any other external network or the internet. So therefore, there should be no access to this. But does that mean all is well? So we've got some comments on record from Pukraj Singh and from Anand V, a cybersecurity expert. So Shobhan, would you like to take us through these comments and what they've pointed out? I think we've broadly covered a lot of this, because as you guys know, we're talking about whether or not there's a serious compromise of the Kudankulam nuclear power plant, and we're looking at whether or not there is a serious risk which we really need to be concerned about. What did the experts who we spoke to have to say about this attack and the way it works?
So a very important point that Anand Venkatarayan, and security researcher, who added this extremely crucial piece of perspective, is that he said that besides the compromise, there's also a power projection exercise. And I think that's a very important point to remember, to put things into context. Because he also points out this kind of an attack would not be the act of a novice hacker, sitting somewhere remotely attacking. This has to be a sophisticated attack that most probably points towards sort of like a larger state-backed or non-state-backed, but a larger actor emanating from another country. So why is this projection of power important? If one were to sort of dig into how cybersecurity and how cyber attacks have panned out over the last 1 decade, you will see the examples of countries like Russia, who have been accused of attacking the critical infrastructures of many countries. Yes, Estonia, Georgia, Ukraine, to name a few, whose national television broadcasting, their electricity grids were taken down as a parallel exercise alongside conventional attacks. So Russia has been using cyber attack alongside conventional attacks to intimidate or to send out a message. So, and the most important example here, which many have been drawing parallels to throughout the day, has been the Stuxnet virus attack, which happened on Iran's uranium enrichment plants, nuclear plants in Natanz in 2010, where the Stuxnet virus actually managed to cause physical destruction. When we think of a virus attack, we think of it affecting a computer and taking out or manipulating the information on a computer. But what Stuxnet managed to show was that it is possible to have a virus which can actually lead to physical destruction of critical infrastructure, where the uranium enrichment centrifuges were physically destroyed. But this is not that case. Why? For the simple reason that two things. One, their systems were also air-gapped, which means that remote attack was not possible. So it was actually an infected USB pen drive that they in a very well sort of planned out manner managed to affect one of the computers which was directly connected to the plant. Here again, the controller system has not been affected, which is also air-gapped, and which is what the official denial has also sort of pointed out. And the other thing is that it was a very sophisticated attack that sort of went on for a year undetected. So these precedents do exist, but the parallels between Stuxnet and Kudankulam sort of end there as of now, from what we know from the information we have now. So it is the IT systems here that have sort of potentially may have been affected, and not the actual plants or the working of the plants.
So I mean, the only thing is obviously that I think the example of Stuxnet, which was that you can potentially affect even an air-gap system, is that I think that's just something which needs to be kept aware of here. Now this, as you said, Stuxnet was a long process. There was a lot of stuff involved. Here, we're looking at this incident taking place somewhere around the beginning of September. And the government has known from that time itself, and as we're being assured, there should have been steps taken at the time itself to make sure that is okay. Ideally, yes, do we want a slightly different messaging from the government when this kind of thing comes up, rather than just sort of rushing to deny, maybe saying, there's an investigation? That might be helpful. But at the same time, obviously, it's understandable why, given the top secret level of this, the government can't obviously give us details about what's going on. Having said that, I think it's important to note that the the power plant has given a very limited denial. It has not denied other aspects of it, and that's something which Pukhraj Singh pointed out, because he said that look, while the operation technology has been air-gapped in this case, he's merely been pointing out that the administrative IT network seems to be compromised, and doesn't necessarily imply that the reactor's control systems are impacted. So there's no reason for anyone to panic at this point. But it's important, and this is actually would be instructive for us to see how the government actually deals with this kind of crisis, because this, on the face of it, you may think, maybe actually it's not that big a deal, but the fact that someone's been able to access in any sort of IT infrastructure at such a critical infrastructure point in the country, that's something which has to be dealt with going forward. And again, as I think Sushovan's pointed out, this is hardly as though India is the first place this has happened. This has happened in countries around the world. It's something which is one of the biggest threats which we have to deal with. And in the bigger picture, this is a big, it's a big moment for Indian cyber defense, and we have what's called, there's supposed to be a system called the Cyber Dome, which is going to have to deal with all of these things. Part of it will be trying to understand what was the objective behind this attack. As Sushovan said, is it merely a power projection? Is it something more? Is there a message being sent to us, or was something actually hit? These are things which obviously we will have obviously some clarity coming from the government, and the government will be working on this, because I don't think we can say that people don't take national security seriously in all of this. I don't think we can probably speculate at this point that it was necessarily the North Koreans behind this, and I think that's something we have to be careful about. We shouldn't be sort of spreading misinformation. But it's interesting to note, obviously, that Dtrack has come from something which has been known to that. We've got a few more comments which I think we can just maybe take a look at here. It is interesting to see that, thank you so much for your comments, Raghvendra Pal Singh. You have been, it's been interesting to see, and we hope that we've obviously been able to help you out here. Dhruv Raj Singh Rawat, I think just don't worry. I think we shouldn't necessarily be too worried about any of this. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we do have a disaster management departments within the MHA and all sorts of processes to deal with, say, nuclear fallout. So again, something which I think you don't need to worry. So Jovan, would you like to sort of just wrap up and sort of give us a quick recap so that we can leave everyone and let them get on with their evenings?
Right. So just to sum it up in conclusion, Kudankulam nuclear power plant been in controversy for many reasons for a long time. Once again, what emerged was that a potential malware called Dtrack appears to have been injected in their IT systems with domain controller access, which means it has access to day-to-day important information about its employees, their username, passwords, and information enough for a foreign entity to sort of know more about power plants, which is a critical infrastructure, which is why this is such an important issue. It is also important to remember that this does not know, cybersecurity researchers are not trying to say that this can sort of affect the power plant itself or lead to a shutdown of the power plants or any kind of sort of rumor mongering. What they're trying to say is that this malware is known for data theft and spying on information. So that's what where the alarm has been raised, and that in itself, because of it being a power plant, is very important information for anyone to have. And finally, given that the official denial has so far come from only the Kudankulam nuclear power project and not from the National Cybersecurity Coordination Office or from any agency of the government that is looking into this, we are waiting to see what and if they say anything at all. And even in the message that was put out, the worrying thing is that is with what also we have seen with Aadhaar. And I think that's the final thought that we would like to sort of end this live with, is that even when we have seen Aadhaar and now this today, is that whenever there is when there are concerns about breaches, the immediate response is to say that A, it is not possible, and B, that the central core database is secure, and in this case the central nuclear reactors are secure, the control systems are secure. Well, even if that may be the case, there are other ways in which information or data or crucial vital assets can be compromised. As in the case of Aadhaar, we have seen reports where from third parties, Aadhaar numbers have been leaked, which is not to say that the central database has been sort of compromised. Here also, just because the central reactors have not been affected doesn't mean that the information in the database, in the central database, could not be affected. So it is I will end with what Anand Venkatanarayan says in his interaction with us at the Quint. He says that given that it is not possible to survive cyber attacks by closing our eyes, this incident shows how unprepared the authorities are, just not on the responding to these incidents, but also on the messaging. So it is very important for the government to sort of assure honestly and honestly and tell us what is happening, rather than blanket denials saying this is impossible.
So that's what we've got for you today on this issue. We've got one of the most detailed stories on this issue up on our website. Do check it out. Do check it out. It has links to everything you might want to see, whether it's tracing where all of this came from or trying to figure out more about Dtrack and what you can do to protect yourself. We've also got, as we mentioned, about the 1.3 million bank cards being potentially compromised. We've got a story on that and lots more on the Quint. So keep following us for all the updates. We will be updating you on this story as well. If anything comes out from the government, if anything comes out from any other independent researchers as well, and we will be trying to ensure that you are informed and that we are not going to actually spread any sort of panic. Srivatsa, thank you again for your comments on this as well, and we hope that we've addressed your concerns and the concerns of anyone else who's been looking at this and getting a bit worried, because you know what, there is a way to approach these things and deal with it, and hopefully that's how this situation will be dealt with.